Aloha, children of the night, and welcome to another episode of the Tiki Golf Club. Today I am in Lyndhurst, New Jersey with my good friend Matt, and you guys may not know exactly who Matt is, but Matt is actually the guy who designed the Tiki Golf Club logo.
It's nice here, right?
Matt's an old friend of mine. We've known each other since the 90s, and you were nice enough to make me this logo, and now there's famous people wearing your logo across the country, and thank you.
You're really welcome.
Yeah. And obviously, as you can tell, we are in Matt's studio here in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, but it's actually your living room. This is all his recording equipment.
Yeah. And the fact that you keep mentioning that I live in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, and I got all this recording equipment in my apartment.
Yeah, well, so what's the address of this place? You're also a big music collector. You have a lot of records, a lot of CDs,
Yes.
a lot of tapes, a lot of everything. And I'll be honest with you, how I got into like anything that was like considered industrial or goth, I don't even know what the words would be to describe the music that you guys got me. It was like you, single-handedly, you and our good friend Sean Runeman. And Sean has actually gone on to become, I guess, world famous.
Yeah, he's recording, still recording. He's playing live right now, actually, I think in Detroit this weekend.
Yeah, he lives in Pittsburgh, but
Yeah.
he lives in Pittsburgh.
He had a band called THD for a long time, and
Yeah.
Ed Vargo.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. But we all grew up together, pretty much around the same area in the Cole region of Pennsylvania. And it's interesting, like growing up where we grew up, and the fact that it was the 80s, it's very, very hard to like find and get into like new music. Or at least it was for me. I mean, like a lot of the stuff I got into was stuff that I found on MTV. But and I learned that it's like it came down to like certain friends that I had that got me into stuff that was beyond that.
Right, and we had our own little group, kind of, that stuck together and shared things with each other, I think, and yeah, it was a little isolated pod of freaks, I think, in that area.
When it comes to goth music, when we're talking about a tiki bar, usually, like I say, if like, well, what would be the correct music? What's the perfect music to play in a tiki bar? And the obvious answers would be exotica and surf music. They come at the very, very top of the list, and I guess Hawaiian music too.
Sure, lots of those jangly, resonating guitars and surf guitars, things like that.
Yeah, surf guitar. I mean, Martin Denny,
Right.
Les Baxter, Arthur Lyman.
But then you get to the surf stuff, Dick Dale and that whole scene. So
Yeah,
it's not out of the realm of possibilities there either. I think.
No, exactly. But the question that I want to talk about, the question I'm posing to my buddy Matt here, and to the audience out there too, because actually I want to see some comments down below. The question is so say you're into tiki, and say you're into goth, and say you have your goth tiki bar. If you were going to play music in your goth tiki bar, what would be some of those bands? What would be some of those albums?
There's a lot of possibilities there, I think, and when it comes to some of that, I used to work in the mall at the music store in the mall, and a lot of what I would play is what I wanted to hear, and you'd get a lot of comments from people. They were interested in what you were playing because they'd never heard it, or they were interested to figure it out, find it, whatever. And I think it would be the same kind of situation with a bar, where I'm going to play what I want to hear in a bar.
Yeah.
And then you hope that people agree with what you want to hear in the bar. That kind of a thing. So yeah, I mean, it really would span quite a gamut, I think. You got a lot of possibilities there if you think of like the more sort of atmospheric,
Yes.
sort of set the mood, relaxation, escapism, those sort of themes. Pretty much anything on the 4AD label, I would say, for a whole period of time. They've gotten a little different now.
What years are we talking?
80s, 90s, so all of the seminal Cocteau Twins albums. And then if you're talking 4AD, Evo Watts Russell had a sort of super group called This Mortal Coil that spanned 3 albums. Basically cover versions of like of songs, but in a sort of dreamlike 4AD way.
So is that how you would describe this type of music, dreamlike?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, kind of a dreamy atmosphere. Not so much the shoegaze stuff, because that gets a little noisier, I think.
Yeah.
But definitely that sort of 4AD had a sort of sound.
It's interesting that you bring up shoegaze, because it's sort of like immediately I think of like My Bloody Valentine, and that's a band that could be very, very melodic, yet very, very loud and noisy.
Sure. But noise in a way that it can be sort of, if you're not aware of it, it can be there in the background. So I think that would also work in those situations. So it's the kind of thing where, if you think about your clientele, if you come into the place and you recognize it, and you know it and you love it, you're going to love that you're hearing it. If you don't know what it is, it can sort of just sit there and be there, and you don't have to know what it is, but it's sort of forming that mood, I think, in the place.
And before we go any further in this conversation, I want to say it's like, when we talk about goth or goth music to play in your this hypothetical tiki bar, it's like we're not just talking about goth. I mean, the thing I always think about, like when I think about like a goth club back in the 80s, and they're not just going to play 100% strictly goth music. They're going to play other stuff.
Sure. Sure.
I can guarantee you, in the 80s, at a goth club, they're going to play like Billy Idol.
Oh, sure.
They're going to play Dances with Myself. They're going to play, like, say, The Cramps. They're going to play Joy Division. They're going to play all these bands where you're going to be like, well, they're technically not goth. The reason why I make this point is, like, when it comes to this list, My Bloody Valentine, Loveless, or the second, the blue one, MBV.
Mm-hmm.
I think those would be two excellent albums that you could play.
Yeah, easily. Yeah. That would be a whole other thing, but it would easily fit within, especially the stuff I've already talked about. The later Cocteau Twins, or even the early Cocteau Twins, or anything on 4AD, anything. There's a lot of those sounds happening on that label for that whole period.
Yeah.
So it could easily fit right into that same sort of playlist in sequence with those albums.
Yeah.
And the same, I mean, if you start to talk in that direction, you have bands like Slow Dive.
Yeah.
Easily could fit into that. And then after Slow Dive, there was a band that they went on to form called Mojave 3. So then you start to talk about really mellowed out, but definitely bar music.
Yeah.
Certainly music people will drink to.
Yeah.
It's just that kind of a thing. Mojave 3 starts to get into that more folky sounds, relaxation, sort of, mellowed out, really nice lyrics that sort of float on top of guitar chords. You're not too far away from things like Nick Cave then, because you're talking about you're talking about like sounds that, I don't know, it's really hard to put it into words, but
now Nick
there's
Cave,
a certain sort of aura about it. Easily.
I mean, when we talk about Nick Cave, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's...
Well, again,
are we talking about the Bad Seeds? Are we talking about the Birthday Party?
That's just it.
Are we talking about Grinder Man?
To me, all of it. Because really the early stuff, was rock. I mean, the Grinder Man stuff now is rock, but it's... the guy... I don't think he's ever released an album that you couldn't consider to be dark, but in a way that isn't that like sort of in your face. And then there's rumors that if you see pictures of him now versus, in those early days, the guy's a vampire. I mean, a lot of people think he's a vampire. He hasn't aged. So
no.
He fits.
Sometimes that happens to people that they already looked old from to begin with.
Yeah, maybe.
And then you just never age. Like John Carpenter always looked old, and now he's just like, well, now you're old for real.
Right.
So it's a curse and a blessing. What about Joy Division?
For sure. And again, it's a band that the clientele going into it, knowing it's a quote Tiki Goth thing.
Yeah.
They're all gonna know Joy Division. So very easily, I think it would fit. But even bands like sort of adjacent to some of this stuff, you're mentioning the sort of shoegaze, noisy guitar sounds.
Yep.
To me, not far away from that would be a band like Boris.
Yeah, all right.
And in fact, I mean, their album Pink.
I mean, Boris,
some of those songs were, you know, I think Jim Jarmusch used in a couple of movies. So talk about cinematic. I mean, it's there. The atmosphere's there. Boris did a cover of My Bloody Valentine stuff on that Yellow Loveless compilation. So,
I mean, you want to talk about Boris? I mean, you're talking about like definitely drone.
Sure.
So
sure.
I mean, like essentially, like any kind of drone, anything that drones would definitely fit.
Right.
And God, when I think of that, I think of the soundtracks from The Blind, from Swans.
Yeah, and then Swans. I mean, look at the discography. Look at the span of time. So anything that Michael Giroir's done, anything Jarbo's done, for that matter, in a sort of opposite direction, but not really, a band like Coil.
Okay.
Coil's Love's Secret Domain was, I think, really sort of the first taste I had of the Wax Trax kind of TVT stuff. So I came into that from a different direction than a lot of people did, but that album alone, you know, was really, you've got a lot of different styles on that album, so I think that would be something else too. And then the Coil's discography is really, again, spans so many years that there's quite a lot of different material on that they've put out that I would think would fit the bill.
I definitely think that Jesus and Mary Chain. I'm biased because they're one of my favorite bands, but like even like Psycho Candy. I mean, even though you have this wall of distortion and fuzz and noise, because it's literally a wall of all this, it just kind of very atmospheric, but very somewhat calming in a way.
Right.
And that's just Psycho Candy, but like I'd go with like any of their albums. I would say you can't go wrong. But mostly Psycho Candy.
Sure.
But then that makes me think of like say Spaceman 3.
Spaceman 3, and then you might as well think of
Sonic Boom.
Yeah, I mean,
Spiritualized
for sure too.
Yeah.
You know, so you're getting carryovers there. You'll hear Spiritualized in sort of Britpop nights. So
yeah.
You know, you're really talking about quite a span of genres, but I think it would all fit. What we talked about sort of before about Jesus and Mary Chain, I think they really wanted to be
Van Halen.
Yes, exactly. I mean, Eddie Van Halen, the Velvet Underground. I mean, they wanted to be the Velvet Underground.
You want to get down to it. I mean, like, come on, the Velvet Underground. Again, I think we both kind of agree. It's like, you know, are the Velvet Underground goth? But it's like, even if they're not, they're definitely the planted the seeds of a lot of what goth would be. The imagery, the lyrical content, you know, just everything. They were a band before their time, you know.
Yeah.
But
and when you put them in the place of, I mean, what years was that?
Late 60s.
Late 60s. But listen to what was going on the West Coast during that same time period. And they you know, you've the Grateful Dead and the Doors and things like that.
Well, I like the Doors though. I do like the Doors.
Right, but I mean, the Velvet Underground is 15 years ahead of what that stuff was, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think you had the Summer of Love on one coast, and
Heroin on the other. What about the Cure?
For sure. And again, the Cure. To me, the Cure, the definitive Cure album, is Disintegration, and it sort of goes in two different directions from there. You know, you've got the earlier stuff that's really jangly pop songs and, you know, more rhythmic, and then the later stuff, which became actually. Disintegration falls in between some of that, but I mean, there's a lot of again, across their discography, pick a genre. You know, they were really doing a lot of different things.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to like the early Cure, like Killing an Arab, yeah, you know, there's not much of a mood there.
Right.
Like my favorite song from the Cure is like Primary, but that's more dancey.
Sure.
But then you get to like A Forest.
Right.
Let's Go to Bed. A Walk. You know, stuff that's...
Love Cats.
Love Cats.
Yeah.
Like The Drowning Man. I love The Drowning Man. Like that is That's definitely like a slow, depressing song. That era. Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. Again, is such an eclectic album to me that
Right.
that would be hard to pick use that in an album. But there's definitely songs on there that you could definitely use.
Probably not Hot, Hot, Hot.
No, or like Why Can't I Be You? Even though I do love that song.
Right.
That's the interesting thing when it comes to like some of these bands that have been around forever. You think like Bauhaus. They're still together now.
Sure.
Would Bauhaus work?
Of course it would. That's a given.
Yeah.
I don't think that has anything. There's no question with bands. Some of those bands, Bauhaus, Sisters of Mercy, anything that's like that. Sort of. Well, Project Records was another label that had a lot of that sort of atmospheric sounds. Bands like Lycia. There's a Black Tape for a Blue Girl. There's a lot of bands on that label that would easily fit into that sort of. They define that kind of atmospheric sound.
Yeah. What about Love and Rockets?
By me, but it would be fine. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a few of their albums would easily fit. And even things like Mazzy Star, Hope Sandoval, her later stuff, definitely.
The thing that made me think about this, and even to start this discussion, is obviously the Throbbing Gristle, where it has the Martin Denny cover, essentially.
To some people, that's not going to be something they want to hear, but they were playing with those themes for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Chris and Cozy, when they went on to do, and really that's where Peter Christopherson, who was Coil, came from. Was earlier he was Throbbing Gristle with those guys. So, yeah,
that was honestly the thing that kind of put some of this together for me. Well, I saw the let's talk about Boyd Rice.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the documentary Iconoclast about him, and he was he was into Tiki. Well, is into Tiki.
Yeah.
And it loved exotica music, and like even opened up Tiki Boys that was in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to have gotten to that bar when it was open, but like in his enthusiasm, like in this documentary, he talks about all this stuff, and I just admired his enthusiasm into all this. It wasn't just sort of like an ironic, kitschy idea. It's like, no, he like truly loves all this stuff.
Sure.
And then it made me realize it's like, oh, you can combine that these worlds can combine. That you don't just have to be into like one genre of music or one other thing. You can bring us all together. And as I said before, it's like what I love about say home tiki bars is the idea. It's like it's your bar. It's all about what you want and what you love and what you like. So put everything that you want into it, including the music.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, it may be in this hypothetical playlist. Yeah, you got your Martin Denny, you got your Les Baxter, but then let's throw some other stuff in there too.
Yeah, even bands like SPK. There's been some album or some of the songs that they put out that are very sort of rhythmic in a way that you could probably get away with it. Yeah.
It's all about
and somebody like Thirlwell. The Fetus bands like that. There was a lot of rhythm in there that you could easily sort of fit into playlists with anything else that's kind of got like these exotic drums or however you want to describe it. And we're talking already about The Cure, but you've also got side projects like The Glove and side projects of Susie and the Banshees, or Susie and the Banshees for that matter, we didn't even talk about.
Yeah.
But the Creatures stuff was incredibly rhythmic and, easily would fit the bill. So you're even more, there was a lot of crossover with some of these bands.
Again, I want to leave the question out to the viewers out there. What bands, what songs, what albums do you think would fit if you were to have your own little Goth Tiki bar, and like what songs would you play? So I think we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah.
But we definitely covered a lot of different bands. And if you're watching this show and it's like you're like, I've never heard of this band, I never heard of that band, I've never heard of this, well, check them out.
Sure.
So Matt, thanks for all the tips.
Sure thing, Ray.
Now, can you go get the albums for all these so we can show them to the audience?
No.
So you may be asking yourself, how can I join the Tiki Goth Club? Well, there is no membership. There are no fees. Well, things have changed. For $15, you can become a member of the Tiki Golf Club. What does $15 get you? It gets you your own membership card with your own number. You also get a couple stickers and a pin. I also have shirts for sale. These are $20, $5 shipping and handling, and I also have hoodies for sale that go for $40, $10 shipping and handling. If you're interested in any of this, go to my website, tikiwithray.com, and there's a tab that says Tiki Golf Club. Just click on that, and all the information you need is there.